Welcome back. Today in this video we're going to look at histograms and frequency distributions. Some of these are not so easy to do, so I'll take you through a two-step process and then suggest a few other things that you might want to try. So the first thing we're going to do is go back to pivot tables, and before we get started, make sure house prices V2 is your starting point, since that's the somewhat modified version of the house prices. And the first thing I'm going to do is save this as V4. So now I have four versions of this. The previous video should have been saved as V3. So now, to make it a little bit different, I'm going to use the beds column to make a frequency distribution. Here is numeric data that is discrete, and there are only 2, 3, 4, or 5 bedroom homes in this particular data set. We'll start out by creating a pivot table. It identifies the range because my pointer was in C2, the first value for bedrooms. So it knows that I want to use my entire house price data set. I'm going to put it, as I have been doing, in L3, this first cell for the pivot table in the data set. This time, we're going to use another feature. At the top over here, you see this little gear-like icon. Drop down and note that field section and area sections are stacked. And then I'm going to click on beds, and you see that it says sum of beds in the values field. And then I'm going to drag copy beds down to the rows. Now, one of the interesting things here is we don't want the sum of beds, we want the count. So if I click on the down arrow right next to the sum of beds, it pulls up a menu list, and I'm going to select value field settings. This feature is important to know for working with numeric data. And again, one of the things about pivot tables is that there's so much capability here, we couldn't possibly cover it all. And some of the versions are slightly different. So I suggest just practicing and playing with this. Once you get the hang of it, getting into the advanced features is not that difficult. So I want to change the sum to count. And now we don't see the table, but if I scroll back up and close the dialog box, there is the sum of counts, the count of the number of homes that have 2, 3, 4, or 5 bedrooms. I could do something similar, like get the percents, and I'll do it the long way, where I'll calculate a percent for each of the different bedroom possibilities. Sometimes we make a mistake, so I'll delete that formula. And again, this formula is simply 6 divided by 39. And the next thing I should probably do is sum that up and change these values that are in decimals to be percentages. Again, just changing it to one decimal place to get the feel for it. And again, just to reinforce what we did last time, I'm going to click on M3, use my Format Painter option so that the percent cell column looks like that. Now, we're not looking for perfection, we're looking for skills here. So each time we go through something new, I'll try and add another capability. And again, we could click here on the main data component, and we could insert a chart like we did, just as we did for the region. And there's a pretty nice looking, and of course the numbers are in order, so that's good. We could also add the nice feature of data labels, where it automatically puts the numbers on top. Some people like this, some people don't, but that's a nice thing that we can do. And there's all kinds of other things you can edit to make it look pleasing. And of course, you can copy and paste it around. So that was one way to do it. Now, depending on what version you have, there's a simpler way. And keep in mind that we were working with discrete data, which is a little bit easier to construct these with. In fact, it's more appropriately to call this display a bar chart, as the bars should be tighter together. So I can go in and highlight the bedrooms column. Okay, highlighting bedrooms. And if I go into insert, and again, not everybody has this feature, but if I insert a statistical chart here, I can do a simple histogram where it gave us pretty much the same chart. Let me see if I can move this around so we can see the comparison. Move this out of the way a little bit. And I can add the data labels in a similar fashion. So I wanted to show you both ways, just to give you that capability. Now, here, we'll do one more. Let me just slide this and overlay it. Now let's do one for continuous data. Our key variable of interest, price. So I've got that highlighted. I'll insert that same statistical histogram chart. And there it is. Here you can see, let me kind of drag this down. Get this to look a little bit better. Where, unlike the number of bedrooms, where most of the homes had between 3 and 4 bedrooms, here most of the housing prices were in the low end, with 2 high-end prices. And as we'll see a little bit later, this suggests a right-skewed data set. We'll talk more about that in a bit. And of course, again, just as I did, I can add the data labels. And here's the interesting part. If you look at the bottom, you have these nice ranges that make more sense for continuous data. And of course, you could do some adjusting here to make those look a little bit more natural. And that then, if you could actually reverse engineer that to make a frequency distribution. So there we have summary tables, frequency distributions, and histograms.